Okay, so I'm assuming you've already read the question, but just to recap very briefly, it involves using an array called player name, and player name contains 6 elements inside. So each element has the name of a student, and as part of the game we're going to roll a dice, and that will tell us how many positions each person needs to move. So for example, if we roll the dice and it comes up with a 1, we want to be able to move Jordan from position 1 into position 2, Sophie from position 2 into position 3, and so on, until we get to Megan, who should be moving all the way back to position 1. So the first job is for us to work out how we're going to move people just by one place. And that's actually relatively straightforward to do. So for example, we would do that by writing something like player name, because that's the name of the array, and then in brackets 2, because that's where we want to move the first player into, and then we say equals player name in brackets 1. So that code would take the person who's at position 1 and move them into position 2. So for example, to show you here, it would take Jordan and it would move him into position 2. Now you can see a problem there. By moving Jordan from position 1 into position 2, we've lost the person who was in position 2. Therefore, how are we going to be able to move them into position 3? So that's a challenge that you need to work out as part of this solution. Let's just move Jordan back for a moment. So the trick really is to take one of the people out of the array completely and store them in a temporary variable, because that will then create a gap for us to move everyone along. So let's do that now. So if we erase the code we've written so far, let's now move Megan, for example, so the very last one in the array, let's move Megan out of the array for the moment. So of course to do that, we need to put Megan into a temporary variable. So to write that, we would write something like temp equals player name brackets position 6. That's going to put whatever was inside position 6 into temp. So temp has now got Megan inside. And you can see in our array we now have a gap to be able to move everything along. So based on our previous knowledge for how we just wrote to put a value into an element inside the array, we could move things along. So let's go player name position 6 equals player name position 5. That's going to move Mickey into position 6. Now you should be able to carry on. Player name position 5 should equal player name position 4, and so on, until we get to player name 1. So keep repeating these lines, and let's do player name 1 equals, so we need to get the person who was in 6 originally and be able to put them back into position 1. You probably remember we put them into a temporary variable. So that person, Megan, is inside here. So we can say player name 1 equals temp. That gets the person out of temp, puts them back into the array at position 1. That's all of the code that we need to do to move everybody by one place. So now everybody has moved along one position, including the person who is at 6 who's gone back to position 1. So that's great. But what happens if we need to also be able to move people by 3 places? Let's say when we roll our dice, it comes up with a 3. We would need to repeat this code 3 times. That then tells us it probably should be contained inside some sort of loop. And if we know how many times we want to loop, that would suggest we need a counting loop. And an example of a counting loop is a for loop. So let's surround this now using a for loop. So to write a for loop, we say for, and then we use some sort of variable. I quite often use the word counter, for counter, and we want our counter, in this case, to start out a 1. So equals 1. That will put the 1 inside counter the very first time we go around the loop. And we want to keep looping until we get to the value from our dice. We haven't got that yet, so let's do that in the line above. Let's see if we can just move Megan out of the way. Oh. Perfect, okay. So we need to get our value from the dice. So to do that, we will create a variable name, let's call it dice, and then we say equals, and then there's no easy direct way to write this in pseudocode, so we're going to use a bit of plain English. So we can say roll of dice, and then maybe in brackets 1 to 6 to show that we know the value is going to be between 1 and 6. So that will get the roll of the dice and puts it into a variable called dice so that we can then use it. So in our for loop, we're going to keep looping until we get to the value of dice. And that could be any value between 1 and 6. So we've created our loop. Now we just need to remember to end our loop. So we can say end for. And that means that however many times we want to repeat our code based on the number of rolls on the dice, it will repeat this piece of code inside the loop.